Hello everybody and welcome back to OMB Reviews. I am the critic who is a cynic. Hope we're doing well, and today we're doing a box office breakdown for this past weekend, which saw the release of DC League of Super Pets from Warner Brothers. We also had the second weekend numbers for Nope drop, and we continue to see Thor Love and Thunder struggle at the box office, though it has finally broken even. That's right, 4 weeks later, an MCU film finally breaks even, but is it really all that impressive, especially when, breaking news, it's losing to the little yellow people called Minions. That's right, Minions beating an MCU film. That is quite an impressive feat, to say the least. Before going any further, though, into that, and also to the $1.3 billion that has now been made by Top Gun Maverick, please make sure that you smash that like button, lap that fire button if you're watching over on Odyssey, and also make sure that you are subscribed to the channel with the bell notification turned on. That way you know every time a new video or live stream goes live on the channel. So let's start off with the domestic numbers for this weekend. As you can see, DC League of Super Pets made $23 million, and though the excuses are already being made, that one of the reasons why the film isn't making as much is because it's the summer slowdown. It could also very well be the fact that the trailer for this film really isn't all that impressive, and even though it is clearly being made more so for kids, that's one of the problems with a lot of modern day kids movies, is that you have to remember it's not just the kids going and packing the car and going to see the theater and going to see the movie on their own. You need to be able to get the parents to have an interest in going to see it too. And in the age that we live in, especially, I'm imagining that many people who saw this film and saw the trailer for it said, hey, you know what? I could probably wait for this film to come out on HBO Max, and I'm willing to put out, and actually willing to put the weight out and not willing to put out any of my money or shell out any of my money for this movie. The $23 million falls well below the projections, especially the projections that were put out by Box Office Pro. They had originally put the range at between 26 and 39 million. This is, of course, based off of Box Office Pro's own metrics, and so some other so-called box office, industry experts might have had some different numbers here, but the fact remains is that they were projecting, Box Office Pro, that the film was going to make 31.2, making 23 million. Not only falls well beneath their projection, but also well beneath even the lowest part of their range by $3 million. So not looking very good for that going forward. And as you can see, they have already started to say at Deadline, for instance, the expected summer slowdown. It's expected, everybody. Though I do imagine that next weekend, when you have the release of Bullet Train, I would not be surprised if that film were to do better than what people are expecting. And I base that only on the fact that the trailer, I think, is pretty effective. And the effectiveness of that trailer, I think, is going to draw a lot more people out to go see it, especially if we start to get some initial reviews and it looks like it's going to be a decent film. It'll be very interesting to see where the critics fall on that one. As we all know, critics' opinions don't mean a whole lot these days, but if you have a very negative opinion review and you don't have a strong word-of-mouth campaign from audiences, that can sometimes be the killer, because as I've mentioned previously, I've had people come over to the house, whether it just be even the guy spraying for bugs, who have seen my setup and said, hey, what do you do? I say, hey, I talk about movies. And the first question they ask is, hey, have you seen this? And I'm like, nah, not yet. Or yeah, I thought it was pretty good. And what's their initial response? Almost always, oh, well, yeah, Rotten Tomatoes has a pretty good score. So whether I like it or not, people are continuing to use the broken system that is Rotten Tomatoes to base their movie-going habits on. And so even though I know the critics don't matter, and the vast majority of people know that the critics don't matter, especially when it comes to the box office, some people do sometimes use that as a metric, unless, of course, you're a film like Top Gun Maverick, where the word of mouth is just so strong, it doesn't matter what any critic would say, even though the critics were mostly positive about that movie, it's still nonetheless very impressive. So looking at the other numbers, we have also the second weekend numbers for the film Nope. This is Jordan Peele's third film, and it dropped only 58%, so a pretty strong hold from its first week, making another $18.5 million. This does come underneath the Box Office Pro projections, which had it around $20 million. So not nearly as far off the mark as DC League of Super Pets was, at least for the breakdown given by Box Office Pro. But the 58% total itself is a very strong number for a film like this, especially a film that costs a little bit more than the other films in the Jordan Peele archives. I don't even know why I said archives, but in the repertoire of Jordan Peele films. The one thing I will note, though, is in my projections that I have on my website, and I'll go over them in a little bit, I do have this film set to be losing money. However, there's a giant caveat to that, because the film has not gotten any international releases yet. That's going to start as early as August 3rd, and then throughout the month of August, they're going to get more. The film's going to get more and more release dates, or rather more and more releases throughout that month, and I think that is going to probably be able to cover and make up some of the ground. The question really is, how close internationally will this film get to the other Jordan Peele films? The other two Jordan Peele films all made around $80 million internationally. Not the biggest of box offices. Again, his films don't really appeal as much to the international communities. That being said, if it's able to get to that point, based off of what it's made so far domestically, it could get just enough to break even. The main point is this: whether or not the film makes money or breaks even or not, it's not going to be as big of a hit as the other films in his repertoire are. And I think that that is a very bad sign for Jordan Peele, because it's not to say that this specific movie is any worse than the other films, but I do think what it shows you is that people have probably gotten a little bit tired of him running his mouth outside of his films, talking and focusing especially on identity politics and other stuff like that, and even bringing it into his movies to a certain extent, sometimes very blatantly, especially when you look at the films like Get Out. And I think that might be, or the numbers that we're seeing from this might be a sign that, hey, yeah, people are kind of tired of it. And we'll wait and see, of course, whether or not that holds true or not once we start getting some of those international numbers playing out. We do have also the 4th week numbers here for Thor: Love and Thunder, and that's right, it took 4 weeks. The film has finally broken even. It is finally profitable. Congratulations, Disney. You don't have a lot of profitable films, it seems like, these days. But congratulations, you've finally done it. With $13 million in its 4th week of release, another 42% drop. It's also finally crossed the $300 million mark, which is something that Minions was able to do a few days ago. So film continuing to track behind that of Minions. But hey, kudos to you, Thor: Love and Thunder. You've made your money back, but I still have to say to the shills, people like John Campea, etc., who said, you're an idiot if you think the film's not doing well. Well, when you compare this to the previous Thor film, Thor Ragnarok, and you adjust for inflation, and then you also compare it to the previous Marvel film, Doctor Strange 2, and then you also compare this even to Minions, you start to realize and recognize, wait a minute, this film's going to end up being one of the lowest grossing as far as profits and profit margins are concerned, one of the lowest grossing films in MCU history. That's not a good thing. That's not a good sign. It also shows you that there is a massive amount of people in your audience that you have lost since Thor Ragnarok, and that you have especially lost since Doctor Strange 2. And again, I think that when you play dumb games, you win stupid prizes, and so even though you're making your money back, Taika Waititi, not looking very good otherwise, and not really looking all that impressive otherwise. What is looking impressive, though, is Minions coming at the number 4 spot this week, another $10.8 million, a 40% drop after 5 weeks of release, still out at over 3,500 screens. As you can see, $320 million for this film. Some might say, this film's got a weak advantage on Thor: Love and Thunder. Yes, but law of diminishing returns tells me that this film is not going to be able to make enough next week to be able to have that be any type of valid argument to say that one extra week would have put this film on par with it, because as this film continues to make money, so this film also will as well. And notice how they aren't really all that different. In fact, there is a situation where Minions could end up in the next week or two edging out Thor: Love and Thunder as it starts to be pulled from theaters. 700 plus theaters, in fact, in this 4th week of release, whereas Minions is still doing quite well in its week-to-week numbers. Top Gun: Maverick. Man, this film, truly insane. 5 weeks, or rather 10 weeks of release at this point, $8.2 million even after 10 weeks of release domestically, a 20% hold, still at over 3,000 screens, up to over $650 million domestically, and when you add the international, at over $1.3 billion. This film not only is already passing the $1.3 billion mark, but is on pace to beat, not only, as it already has, the domestic total for Star Wars: The Last Jedi, but also the international total, and that's when you even adjust the numbers for inflation. So, yeah, Top Gun Maverick, showing if you make films people actually want to go see and are actually fun, people will go see them. And if you don't, they won't go see them. Number 6 spot goes to Where the Crawdads Sing, which has finally broken even. So this film has had very small drops from week to week. And even though the numbers aren't that high, it is large enough for the film's much smaller budget compared to the other films on this list to be able to have made its money back at this point. Elvis had made its money back last week, but is continuing to add some profit with another $5.8 million. The Black Phone also continuing to add to its profit margins as well. Jurassic World Dominion making another $2 million. And by the way, there were some people saying, hey, just wait for this film to come out in Japan. Well, it's made about $10 million in Japan, at least according to the numbers charting, which again is not always necessarily the most up to date, but it's not looking like it's going to be enough if that is the number it has. And if it makes another $20, $30 million, wouldn't be enough to hit this film or help this film get to $1 billion. So I'm going to say Jurassic World Dominion, though it is a pretty massive, profitable film as far as net gains are concerned, is not likely to get to the $1 billion mark that it should have gotten based off of those initial numbers that came out. And then an independent film called Vengeance, which I know very little about, got $1.7 million this week. Looking individually at all the films, DC League of Super Pets made $41.4 million. As far as the worldwide numbers are concerned, that's a very close number. I feel like this film should be doing a lot better domestically, but hey, we'll have to wait and see what those second weekend numbers are going to look like. But right now, it's not looking very good for this film. And Warner Brothers continues to show itself to be a studio that makes a lot of films that spend probably a little bit more money than they should. I mean, not nearly as... They didn't spend nearly as much, I should say, on this film as they did, Matrix Resurrections or anything like that, which were massive financial losses. But at the very least, DC League of Super Pets is costing just enough for the film likely to end up being a box office bust. We'll have to wait and see what those numbers are next weekend. The film Nope, as you can see, it is domestically, hey, not doing terribly. It is middle of the road as far as where the projections are for this movie based off of how much it made opening weekend and what kind of drop-offs we've seen day to day. So it's not at the high end, that $97.4 million, but it's also not the low end of the $72 million range that the numbers gives right now. So that's why I say, even though right now, if you were to ask today whether the film's going to make money or not, right now it's not looking that way. But that's again because there's no international numbers coming in, and there will be some international numbers. Just how much of the international market is going to show up for it is going to be the big question for that. Thor: Love and Thunder. Oh yeah, you finally made your money back. Congratulations. $625 million was the break-even point, and it's made $662. But if you look at these numbers, these are quite paltry in comparison to many other films in the MCU, and also some other films that are out right now. And also, if you compare this number right now, where it is domestically, to the range that this film should be reaching, or rather within the range that it should be reaching based off of the early numbers, you can see it is still vastly underperforming its own numbers by a good $20+ million. And again, couldn't happen to a nicer company. When you compare this film to Thor Ragnarok and Doctor Strange Multiverse of Madness, even Minions Rise of Gru, as you can see right here, right now, same time of release, Minions is beating this movie. Minions has $710 million worldwide versus Thor: Love and Thunder $662. I don't think this film is going to even get to $710 million in its fifth week, where Minions is currently right now in its fifth week of release. So you think about that. This film is losing to Minions. And I'm not trying to say that Minions is terrible, but I'm trying to say that if you're talking about an MCU film that is in a franchise where the last film, Ragnarok, made $869 million, a feat that Thor: Love and Thunder can't even dream of being able to reach at this point. What it shows you is that the interest for this film is not there. It continues to wane from week to week. And also it shows you massive loss of audience between these films. So where are the hundreds of millions of dollars that was made by Doctor Strange? Now, I know that film was definitely coming off of the heels of Spider-Man No Way Home, but clearly this film also had very bad word of mouth, which is why it dropped like a giant brick after its first week of release. And, so on and so forth, was still able to make just enough, though, because of that, especially because of opening to $450 million worldwide, $150 million more than where Thor: Love and Thunder was. What we're seeing is that there is a loss of audience. And if you want an even better and more fair comparison, because I mean, some people might say, it's not really fair. Okay, Thor Ragnarok. These are the numbers adjusted for inflation, $869.4 million. There's about, by the end of it, probably $100 to $200 million worth of people or ticket sales that have been lost. Where do those numbers go? Well, there was something called a pandemic. Oh, okay, then why are we seeing massive numbers for Top Gun Maverick, which is again at $1.32 billion, which is, oh, wait a minute, 2017, that wasn't during the pandemic. Wait a minute, Last Jedi was still able to make $1.3 billion. Wait a minute, this film is only about 40 million off from that? Oh, it's going to easily make that money in about a week or two. Oh, that's right. Your excuses fall out the window when you actually compare it and use actual real-life data. Point is, Top Gun Maverick, congratulations, y'all, getting to $1.3 billion. Continue to move on, man. If you can get all the way to $1.4 billion, that would be awesome. I didn't even think that $1.3 billion was going to be enough, but hey, the numbers are doing so much better. And this is also not just because of domestically, but also internationally, the film is doing so much better every single week. hey, kudos to them for being able to bring that out. Where the Crawdads Sing, $62 million, now has broken even this movie. Elvis continues to make some profit, $234. Jurassic World Dominion, as I mentioned, $942.5 million. And even though these charts right here typically aren't always the most up-to-date information, we can see right now, according to their numbers, that the film in Japan made around 10 million. As you can see, 379 screens is what they're reporting, which would be a pretty good per theater ratio. We'll have to wait and see exactly what kind of numbers we actually get in the long run for this. However, I just don't see it being enough to push this film to $1 billion. But hey, I have been wrong before. And so for those that actually like this movie, which I don't quite understand if you do, hey, whatever floats your boat. I don't think $1 billion is within this movie's future when it should have easily gotten to that point. And if you go ahead and look at the domestic numbers, you can see this film, it dropped off pretty quickly and was at the very bottom rung of that range. Again, could have been so much higher. It should have been up to $561 million. So this is the reason why the film should have been and could have been a massive box office success, but because the film wasn't good, a lot of people decided not to go see it. Looking at the box office charting as we wrap up this box office breakdown, just look at the numbers here. As again, we have these numbers now for Nope second week to be $80 million. Remember, these are all, though, projections without any international for Nope, and so these numbers will definitely be off by the end of it if I had to guess. So right now, just domestically, the film is expected to make somewhere between $115 and $161 million if, again, these numbers continue to hold. I think that the international numbers will be a lot more impressive for that film, but because of it needing to make $170 million in order to break even. Right now, just domestically, it's projected to lose somewhere between $32 and $5 million. As I mentioned, I think that when you add in even just a little bit of the international numbers, it's going to be able to make up quite a bit of that money. And so do not be surprised if Nope is able to break even. The point, though, is that when you compare Nope to the film Us or to the film Get Out, for instance, because those films cost so much less and still made a decent amount of money worldwide, there was a pretty good return on investment. Whereas with this movie, if you're talking about a film barely breaking even or making just a little bit of profit, that's not a good sign. That is not a good thing to be pushing for. You then also see the numbers for Where the Crawdads Sing. And again, these updated numbers here show you that that film has now finally broken even. Paws of Fury Legend of Hank continues to be a box office flop. This is the reason why, as I mentioned with DC League of Super Pets, if these numbers hold, it's very, very dangerous for this film to end up being yet another Warner Brothers box office failure. Thor: Love and Thunder finally getting to its profitability territory, $22.4 million, but just how much does it have left in the tank? Who knows? Some are going to argue, well, there's no real competition. That does not mean that people are going to go see a film. And I think Bullet Train is going to probably surprise some people. And then again, that's just my own early guesstimate there. And that's just based off of my own thoughts about the trailer. Minions Rise of Gru, though, is over $50 million higher than where Thor: Love and Thunder is. And so not only do you see that in the total worldwide numbers, and likely will end up being a higher grosser as far as worldwide numbers compared to Thor: Love and Thunder, just looking at the actual net gain profits, because they didn't spend an arm and a leg as they did on Thor: Love and Thunder, almost $300 million in net gain profits for Minions, whereas $22.4 million in net gain profits, not looking good. Compared to the first 2 weeks, this film's 75%, which is on the very, very low end, whereas Rise of Gru getting close to doubling what it made in its first 2 weeks of release. Very good numbers there. Lightyear continues to be a box office flop, and the film's being pulled out of pretty much all the theaters that they have left remaining. It was in the thousands of dollars that it made this week. So, hey, for anyone looking forward to it coming out on Disney Plus, let me know what you think about it. And Jurassic World Dominion, even though I don't think it's going to get to $1 billion, it still is over $300 million net gain profit, which is still a great return on investment, though this number should have been much higher. And I think that they're going to look at the film Top Gun Maverick, for instance, and say, oh, wait a minute, we could have made over $500 million in net gain profit. Oh, yeah, maybe we shouldn't be all that excited for the number. But hey, profit is what profit does. But what are y'all's thoughts about these numbers? Let me know in the comment section down below. And also, if you've seen DC League of Super Pets, if it's any good, worth seeing. And where do you think Nope's going to end up? Do you think that those international numbers are going to end up showing up for it? Really, there's no indication that that would not be the case. The question, of course, is how much do they show up for it? Especially with it being a, more of an alien invasion type story. Maybe it'll appeal to some other audiences. Maybe Mexico, for instance, it'll appeal more broadly to. Who knows? Who knows? I don't know why Mexico would. I just decided to throw it out there. Throw it a bone. We'll see what happens. And let me know your thoughts about that or anything else I mentioned in the comment section down below. If you like this video, smash that like button, slap that fire button on Odyssey. You guys are all amazing, and Beetle People will have an August shout-outs video filmed in the next couple of days. And so if you are a keeper of the Bifrost level or above, specifically on Patreon or Subscribestar, or you're a Locals member, where that's the only tier, then if you want a special shout-out, of a special verbal shout out, if you want me to shout out a YouTube channel, things like that, please DM me on those respective platforms or through other social media accesses. Find that in the top link of the video description if you want to find out more information about that. So that way I can get that shout out ready for the video. I'll try and send a message out through those various platforms to remind people, but I figured letting you all know if you've watched all the way to the very end, hey, you can get a jump start on that. But anyway, you guys are all amazing, beautiful people. Hope you all have a wonderful rest of your day. And as always, God bless. And now for a huge special shout out to my July Patreon Subscribestar and Locals members at the Keeper of the Bifrost level and above. First starting off with Brandon, let's go Brandon, Chris from the 80s, who you can check out over on YouTube, Garrett Searles, Hymir Ari Hymason, Jeff Toon, Joe Horn, Jonathan Carney, Laura, the Modern Major General Story, Father, Luca Illick, Orange Hat Reviews, who you can also check out over on his YouTube channel as well. Congrats on recently getting to 1,000 subscribers. Rosetta Allen, who you can also find on YouTube as well. Stan Andrian and Miss Martin Muses, who also has her own YouTube channel. Thank you all very much for supporting me over on the platform of Patreon. We also have my Subscribestar members, Matt317, Storm Tracker, The R, Fast Reaction, John B, Mr. Roy, Glinzer, J. Alice McCarthy Jr., shout out to you, good sir, and continue that awesome recovery that you are doing. Dean Heiss, J-Rod, the Beer Guru, and ZK-Man. ZK-Man, you can find out over and follow him on Twitter as well. And we also have my Locals members. We have of course, the lovely and amazing Minnesota hockey fan. How about a hockey player? UAB UAB Mad Dog, Mike Jackson for the win, and Robert Barnes, as well as Brett D90. Thank you very much. And my last supporter, of course, is the amazing Tina B, Empress of the Universe, one of my mods on the channel. Check out her new show with my other Valkyrie, Stephanie B, on her channel, Tina B's channel, which is called Soup to Nuts. Go check that out because it is pretty awesome and fun content. Anyway, that is going to be it for all of my Keeper of the Bifrost level members and above. If you want your name shouted out at the end of every video and live stream, please make sure that you check out the top link of the video description. It is w.lo, the Willow link, as I like to call it, and you can find my Patreon, Subscribestar, etc., where you can get not only shoutouts, but also access to an exclusive podcast that I do with John the Flick Pick Flickinger every single month, and also access to giveaways of Blu-rays, 4Ks, etc., all that good stuff. Check that out in the video description. You guys are all amazing and beautiful people. Hope you all have a wonderful rest of your day, and as always, God bless.